Good morning, good afternoon, and good night, wherever you're tuning in. We are Slava and Jonathan, bringing you the Side Quest podcast, where we talk about character development, stories, and all things that are world building. And we occasionally take side quests, because, frankly, that's how conversations work. Just as a reminder, this whole show is spoiler heavy. So sit back, tune in, and join us on this episode of Side Quest. Hello, Slava.
Hello again, Jonathan.
It's good to be back from our lengthy break. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, same. Absolutely. I missed doing this. I got a necessary vacation, a long-awaited vacation.
Did you go to the Appalachian Mountains?
No, the Blue Ridge.
Nice. I got a buddy who was hiking the Appalachian Trail, and so I've heard some of the mythology around that, where if something calls out to you in the woods, you don't answer. That could be an interesting special episode at some point where we discuss folk mythology that isn't necessarily a book.
Yeah. Or maybe we read a book in which folk mythology is modernized and made into current horror.
Could be. I spent way too much time on TikTok in some of these hashtags, watching and listening to some people's stories. There was one I listened to just recently where this gal, it was like midnight, and she was like just outside by a fire writing whatever in her yard with her dog at her parents' house. Her dog like is sleeping, and then you know how dogs do when they notice something that's coming, but they become protective, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he puts his head up, ears are perked, and he's just growling. And she's like, because she doesn't see anything, right? And then she hears, hello? In like this little girl's voice. And she's
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah.
Keep writing, lady. Just keep writing.
Yeah. And then she's like, she doesn't say anything. Hello? Is anyone there? And she's like thinking through this thing, and her dog is like about to move that direction, and it's just quiet and still beside this thing. And then it stops, and then from another direction, it becomes a different type of voice that's not a little girl's voice that's speaking out to her. And she's like, nope. And the dog like gets up and growls again in the different direction. And I was like, that's wild. She didn't go inside, which is, I have a lot of questions about. Yeah, I don't know. So I spent time, and maybe she's making it up. I didn't like look at her account, right? I'm not scrutinizing her account. I just choose to believe that this person was telling the truth about her story. But I was like, that's wild. It brings up a lot of questions about things that animals can notice that we can't. She was like, there's no footprints, and she didn't see anybody. So anyway,
Awesome.
you find a book like that that's well written, and we'll happily throw it on the list here at some point, but I don't know of any.
I'll begin my research anew.
Yeah, it's a really weird thing when you have a world within a world, almost, because like this seemed like a spirit realm kind of thing that she was dealing with. But I'd say this is a decent segue when we have our pocket world over in Ghostwater, where there's a world within a world that people step into. Definitely different, but the interactions and the intersection between two time-space continuums, if I can call it that. I know I'm not doing it justice.
No, it works. It works.
We can move back into one of my favorite books from the Cradle series. But before we do, make sure that you hit that subscribe button so that you never miss a side quest.
So you're saying this is your favorite one?
It is my favorite one. Do you want to give a little blurb real quick of what happened last time? And then I know what you want to say. Give us the blurb and then get into it with me about this this being my favorite one.
Last time on Ghostwater, we have Lyndon and his team heading to a pocket world, as Jonathan mentioned, created by a monarch named North Strider. They find a door to the pocket dimension. They open it. Fight breaks out, and Lyndon closes it by destroying the portal before Yaren and Mercy can follow him through. Yaren and Mercy have their own adventures, and we see Lyndon going through a similar cycle where we saw him in Book 2, where he's alone in a cave. He is with his trusty dragon, Orthos, and he has to quickly advance. Where we leave him is just after he finds Dross and helps him switch bodies. And Dross is a sentient construct who's fun. Reminds me of Nightblood without the lust for destroying evil. And where we left off last week is the final confrontation with a dragon named Carrie for short. Lyndon sets out to kill her and her attendants. He weakens Carrie with the Void's Dragon's Dance. Lyndon is far more advanced than when we left him in book 4. That's where we left off. And if I remember correctly, I think he actually kills her in chapter 8 or 9. So Lyndon murdering people now.
Yeah, well, he doesn't set out to kill her, but to Orthos's wisdom of the ages, being a dragon that used to be the lords over the gold dragons. The black dragons used to reign. Black Dragon Empire used to be this massive entity, and the gold dragons were just scraped by. Now, granted, we're getting one side of the story. I think it's somewhat reliable because it's Orthos, even if it does have bias littered in to our entertainment, right? But yeah, Lyndon, he doesn't want to kill someone, but there comes a point where if they're not going to stop, then he's got to finish it, which is it's growth for him, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
And I kid about him murdering people. It's self-defense, so.
Castle law, protecting your space.
That's right.
Mean, I think it's a different when you're in quote-unquote public space because it's Northstrider's pocket dimension. So
there's no stand your ground in Northstrider's pocket world?
I mean, Northstrider stood his ground when Akura... Oh, shoot, I'm forgetting his name. That died. Harmony?
Yes.
Died at the end. Akura Harmony died at the end.
Yeah.
And Northstrider's like, I'm not going to help you, and leaves. But we'll get to that. We got to backtrack, though, because I know that you are kind of chomping at the bit to tell me how much you disliked this book. Not in the same way like City in the City. It's not that level of critique, but Slava was telling me about how he didn't really like this one in terms of the Cradle series as a whole so far.
Right. So I think it's a bit funny that this is your favorite book out of the series because thus far, this is my least favorite. Now, I will say this. The week that I read this book, it took me about 8 days. I was under a lot of pressure at work. There's 3 campaigns that I'm in charge of, and one of them is akin to a Super Bowl. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. It should be 5 solid products that turn into 18, but be that as it may.
They don't pay you to make the rules. That's what I'm hearing.
Sure. That's part of it. So it could have been that. And when I was reading this book, although I was in a relaxed state, I was on the bus going home. Everything was left at my desk at work. I wasn't necessarily thinking about Super Bowls or anything akin to it. But my mind might have been tired, and I was just moseying on through the book, if you will. Maybe 50-50, column A, column B kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But the other side of it, I was just unimpressed. I mean, I liked the story. I'm happy specifically for Yaren because we see Yaren's growth. I liked the introduction of Dross. I liked Ethan's dance at the end. So those 3 things, and I mentioned that before we started recording, those 3 things specifically stood out to me, and I'm happy to talk about them at length as they come up in our episode here. But apart from that, I was like, yep, okay. And I don't mean that in any flippant way either, because I enjoyed the story, because I have enjoyed the previous 4 books, and I want to see where Lyndon and Yaren and the rest of the gang go. But I wasn't as captivated by this book as I was by 4. And we had our little critiques on 4. It felt like an interlude. It felt that it ended too quickly or things were kind of left unanswered, maybe. I even like that more than I like this. Not my favorite book out of the series.
Yeah. Which, when you told me that, I was like, oh, okay. That surprises me because I think that there's just a lot of fun elements that are new. This is one of the things I love about this series is the world of Cradle, iteration... Oh, shoot. I'm so much for being a fan. Iteration 117, I want to say. Is that right? Sounds right. Yeah, iteration 110, not 117. Derp. Iteration 110. Cradle. The world keeps growing. we keep seeing, and I think that some of our guests next episode will dive into this idea of soft magic system, hard magic system. We talked about this at one point in our Way of Kings journey about the differences of the systems, but I think we'll take it a different direction here because our guest has some thoughts on it. But I love the fact that you're like, okay, he's growing, there's power levels, but there's like a world within a world. It reminded me, and I've made this analogy before, of Dragon Ball Z, the hyperbolic time chamber, where you go in. It's not the same because time doesn't travel differently there. As far as we know, it's the same. Time keeps moving perpetually the same. But because it's like a dimension within a dimension, it shifts how it works, right? And that's part of what I love here. I understand there's some critiques on forums that I've read where people are like, well, Lyndon powers up too quickly in book 5. And I'm like, okay, sure. But like, that's not this type of series this is. This isn't Stormlight Archives.
It's interesting that you say that, because when I see Lyndon in the prologue and he's kicking ass and taking names, I'm not upset by it, but I was like, where did this come from? What happened from you attaching the arm to you now kicking ass as a representative of the Skysworn, even having the wherewithal to play possum with this guy and then still kick his ass? It did jump out at me as strange. It was sudden. It was a surprise to me.
It's jarring, right?
A little bit, yeah, I guess.
For the character.
Yeah, unexpected.
I think, and I don't have any sort of evidence to prove this, but I think because of how book 4 ends and where Lyndon is at as a character, not in terms of plot necessarily, and then where he's trying to bring Lyndon in book 5, to me it feels like a bridge, like a quick, like, hey, let me write a short piece that could, like, quote, fill the gap of Lyndon's journey to connect these two things, these two stories he's trying to tell.
Yeah.
And I can't prove this, right? I have no sort of evidence. I didn't see it in his blog, anything like that. But that's my perception.
No, you make sense. That makes sense. Because if this was a TV show and we jumped in time from episode 4 to episode 5, let's call them episodes, not books.
Yeah, love it.
Confusing the audience because this is episodes, an episodic podcast.
This is episode 90. We've been here for 90 episodes, guys.
Dude,
crazy.
Yeah. If this was episode 5 after episode 4 and we just see an older Lyndon doing things that he wasn't able to do when episode 4 concluded, it wouldn't be as jarring. But because this is a book, I think I expected the bridge to be more clear or explained better or in more detail. Mm-hmm. And that's fine. Not necessarily a critique of Will's writing or style, but it was unexpected. I think jarring's too strong a word.
Okay.
Maybe it's the right word, but it was unexpected, and I went with it.
Abrupt?
I guess. Whatever. Unexpected.
I'm trying to translate Russian. Give me a hand here.
Touche. What was the original question?
Forums.
Forums. So, all that to say, I think I understand why the people in the forums say what they say. I wouldn't agree with them overall in the series because this is the way this type of anime has to. Well, this type of books.
Right.
If it's akin to shonen anime, it has to be fast.
Yeah.
But in book 5, I understand why they start complaining about it in book 5 because it does seem just to ramp up. Even the stuff he does in the Ghostwater cave, those did seem really fast.
And that's one of their main complaints because they're like, he's in a cave for, a couple chapters and then hits another power level. Like, come on. To them, it didn't seem like he earned it. I'm putting inflection in their writing because I'm reading text, right? But that's the impression that it reads is like, well, he didn't earn this. I get why you say that, but to your point, it's like an anime. You need to, as the author, have the liberty to speed up and slow down for the parts of the story you're trying to tell. We haven't seen Lyndon go to the bathroom or any character, right? Like
I have.
So you don't want all those details, right? And I'm being facetious on purpose here, but it's like I don't want those details. I don't need those details, right? I don't need every time Lyndon eats a meal. Of course, that's a bad example because he eats a lot of meals in this book with these fish
and drinks a lot. You would imagine he would go to the bathroom quite a bit for all the water he drinks.
That's true. But it's spirit water and things, and dream water.
There you go.
But you get my point, right? Like, the author needs to have the liberty, and also, the quality that I think the forum readers want, which would be a notch or two in the direction of a Stormlight Archive or a Game of Thrones style book. Because frankly, if there was something that caliber for this series, we'd all buy it.
Yeah.
Because it'd be really good. But Will, and I'm not trying to rag on him, but like, he's not that type of author. And that's okay. We don't need him to be that type of author. We enjoy the pop fiction and the fact that this is a different genre for most readers. Like, I haven't read a book like this before. I originally classified it as progression fantasy. That's the only thing I understood it as, because I'm like, well, the character levels up, so I'm going to call it progression fantasy.
Yeah, that makes sense. Makes sense. Still a good book, but I agree with the complainers to a degree. I don't think I'm that passionate about to go write a complaint on the forum, but I understand where the guys are coming from.
You didn't buy poster board and spend a whole evening, stayed up all night and made your poster so you can come up in the morning and wave it in someone's face. But you are there in spirit. You stopped for coffee and an eggle. Wow.
I did. Yep.
Stop for coffee and an egg and bagel sandwich to stand and see what happens.
And then I missed the protest, but I was like, yeah, down with Will Wight. Ghostwater sucks. No, not really.
As he picks up book 6.
Right. As I pick up book 6. As I give the man money.
Yeah. How dare you write this book? Let me buy your next one. Oh, man. Okay, so that's your overall with kind of how you feel about the book, which is fair. I think you'll still enjoy the series overall. But yeah, not everyone's going to be a home run. That's fine.
No doubt. I'm enjoying the series. I want to read the next one. I'm happy to read the next one after the next one. We'll finish the series. I'm invested, but this was just, to me...
Yeah, plateaued a bit.
Yeah.
So, do you like when Will writes like a movie where you're reading about Yaren and Mercy and then it, boom, jumps to...
Yes.
Zeal or Lyndon or both?
I do. I like that because he does it well. I think it can be jarring if not done well. That's why I think where the word is appropriate, because if an author fails to make the transition smooth or make the edit, if you will, the cut between scenes, I don't want to say seamless because an abrupt cut is not supposed to be seamless.
Right.
But you know what I'm trying to say. If it's not natural, right, where like it ends with Lyndon in the middle of a thing where it creates suspense, or it's a natural place to cut it, even though it might be in the middle of something. And as a filmmaker, you understand this. I don't have the right vocabulary for it, but it just makes sense to make a cut here and then to jump to something else. And then when you watch it on screen, whatever the intent of the director is, it's well executed. So I think in the literary sense, Will does that well here.
Yeah. I am captivated when authors write as if I'm watching a movie, because it then feels more like a movie than a movie does. And I only say that, even though I'm a filmmaker, because I get more time with the characters, and we all know that I really love character development. And so seeing it in my mind and world building, that's true. Don't forget that. I'm sure I'll complain at some point about that, even today. But being able to see it, and maybe it's because I'm a filmmaker, or it was in my past primarily, that I'm reading it and I go, oh, and then we jump to the next scene. And now I see whatever else is going on. Even if it's a snippet, like when Zeal finishes attempting to rebuild his core, if I can call it that, and find healing. And I want to go back to the moment where that's really funny with him and Lyndon in a second. And then he's automatically transported to the Beast King, right? Like, what happened? Well, I know what happened. Like, there are powers at play. He went back to his master, was doing things, and then his master's like, hey, we got to go help a couple golds. Do we have to? Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Okay, well, maybe I'll die. Okay, have fun.
I love that scene. And you could, I suppose you could take it a couple of different ways if you want to play around. Either he's wishing for death, because then this will be the last time he has to deal with his master's nonsense or what he perceives it. Or he's just like, oh, okay, maybe I'll die.
Yeah.
So I enjoy Will Wight's subtle, dry humor that he inserts into the book sometimes, into the characters. And he does it appropriately. He just doesn't insert himself into every character.
Right.
And hell, I don't know the guy from Adam, so he could be an introverted, non-funny guy that just knows how to write funny stuff, which I doubt that's actually possible.
Yeah.
I think he has a really great sense of humor because that can be seen in his character. But for the sake of argument, let's say there's a possibility in this dimension where he's just detached from the humor that he writes. It's still fun to watch characters just say things. Well, let me put it this way. Just as for you, a filmmaker, previous life or current life, it's fun to watch scenes develop in a literary sense. For me, as somebody who enjoys writing, even though right now write in a technical sense and not in any creative sense, when you weave together a story, whether you're writing a commercial or you're writing a technical overview of a thing, you're writing a campaign script, or I write scripts for some of the videos we produce, it's fun to interject some levity into a more serious topic.
Oh, yeah.
Or even get a person's get him caught off guard. Just a side quest for a second. I worked for a seminary, and I created videos for them. Part of my job was to create videos, and I created a video that was supposed to be like students talking about how great this seminary is. And I videotaped this woman. She was a young woman, and I kept in one of her flubs. She just laughed. Like she stumbled over a word, she laughed hysterically, and then went right back into talking about the script, which I also wrote. But we kept that in, and everybody's like, oh, it sucks. You can't do that. It's a flub. I'm like, shut up. Keep it in. Most watched video out of all the videos in the history of the seminary.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because it was inauthentic. I mean, some people probably watch it just because they like seeing, young women. Probably a lot of it was guys just watching because we promoted the video. Oh, this is a girl. Let me watch that. It might have been as silly as that. Listen.
The thing is, you're not. It's the internet.
I'm not wrong.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong, and we're men, and that's a thing. It's like, so it's just funny because you're calling it out.
Yeah, it just is what it is. This is how silly things are on the internet. But I know for a fact, outside of that, if you all the pining seminarians that wanted to find a wife and thought she might have been single, she wasn't. She had a kid and a husband. But the fact that about 15 seconds in the video, there was a natural reaction from a person, that I think made the video. And I think it made it rewatchable. And people watched maybe not rewatchable, who wants to watch a commercial over and over again. And that's what it was.
The single guy's trying to get this lady who's married.
Yeah. But it made them watch till the end. The watch time rates were through the roofs on this particular commercial.
I hope that lady shows up in the video again.
Right? And it was just her. It was her talking for 45 seconds or a minute. Anyway, so when a writer interjects the humor or even just regular old speech about, well, we're walking by the river and there are trees, and it's kind of boring expositional dialogue, if an author is able to make it believable, something silly or something serious, if the author is able to put in the words that how people actually speak, I guess is what I'm getting at, it's so much better.
Yeah.
Anyway, I've digressed a little bit from the point.
You were on a side quest. But it sounds like you're talking about and giving credit to Will's capabilities as a writer and an author to build authentic characters and not simply copy and paste himself into every character, which then makes them feel drab.
Yeah. Yep. Because a lot of times authors will create characters that are autobiographical or even write stories that are autobiographical. And I think Zeal's little quips and just his attitude and how he feels about his situation without giving us what we always want more of, Jonathan, and now you've won me to your side, without giving us 10,000 pages of backstory, I still got the sense that Zeal is in the situation he's in under duress. And maybe there's no gun to his head, but coming from a place where he can do whatever he wanted and buy whatever he wanted, to having to answer to this Lord, what's the name of his title? The proper
Beast
title?
King.
Beast King. So this Beast King, he doesn't seem to hate the Beast King, but he doesn't seem to like what he's doing. He's like, yeah, I guess he'll die. Let's go, whatever. So it takes a little bit of talent to be able to tell us enough, and specifically you and me, maybe specifically me in this situation. It takes a lot of talent to tell guys like us enough without giving us the thing that we always, ramble on about. Well, what about an extra couple of sentences? What about an extra chapter on why that guy did this thing? So, good for him.
I want to unpack authentic characters in Will's writing just for a hot minute. But I think that part of the complaint that we have is due to the fact that, and I think we talked about this in one of our more recent episodes, of authorship back in the day had more direction and intention than authorship does today. Where today we're just writing stories, but back in the day there were, like I'm thinking Dostoevsky. He's trying to write these masterful things, and he's got a lot of intention. And when he's doing his rewrites, he's really honing in and strengthening some plot lines and cutting others and whatever. But I think
there was
that's
a story behind a story. There was a treatise on current events, or a treatise on, whatever the conversations in the marketplace of ideas was there. Dostoevsky is full of that. Tolstoy,
yeah.
Dickens also, Tale of Two Cities. I haven't read it since high school and forgot everything my teacher said about it, but he was commenting on the French Revolution in some way.
Yeah. Well, Will, if you ever hear this, we have compared you to Tolstoy, Dickens, and Dostoevsky. So, good job.
And we're a big deal because we're two guys on the internet.
Two guys on the internet. That's what we should have called the podcast. I think it was taken.
We should have.
Why didn't somebody tell us? Let's dive into this authentic characters thing, because I really see that each character, to your point, has a history, has wants, even if we don't know exactly what they are, but they're going a direction, right? Like Yaren, we know, wants to get better. She's always looking to improve. Lyndon wanted to just be a participant and get into copper, and now he's in a low gold, or a high gold. I'm drawing a blank. He's in gold, and he's like excelling, and he is going quickly. Even after he achieves, I want to say it was high gold, he is like, I can't wait till the next advancement. When about 6 pages earlier, Zeal was like, there's no top, there's no end, which is juxtaposed to what Ethan said, where he's like, I want to go to the end of the sacred arts. So either Ethan doesn't understand, and maybe Zeal is, maybe Zeal was leaps and bounds ahead of Ethan.
It could be also, there is no spoon, it is you who bends. The idea that even though you reach the epitome, the top of the sacred arts, monarch, as a monarch, there is still so much to do and so much to expand. Because Neo is the one, for those of you who don't understand the reference of the spoon, Neo in the Matrix is the one, but even as the one, there is much more for him to do beyond the realization that he's the one. After he kicks all the agents' asses in that hallway, there's still more to do. And he goes, I'm coming for all of you. Now, not a one-to-one analogy, but maybe that's what Zeal's talking about.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, we certainly see Nora Strider come back at the end of the book. He's a monarch. Akura Malice, she's a monarch. And these are the top-level monarchs. We saw in the first book that there are monarchs like the Nine Cloud Court and the Eight Cloud Clan, something like that. I can't remember their name off the top of my head. But like, there are other people who are monarchs who exist, and that is the top power level. And below that, you have Herald and Sage, which are like side levels, side categories. But anyway, I'm getting away from authentic characters. Zeal is, you used the word morose earlier, which I think is an apt way to describe him. But we all, and maybe I'm just generalizing here, but I feel like everyone I've ever met has had at least a little bit of time where they were a Zeal, where they're like, yeah, well, maybe I'll die. And they're not even depressed anymore. They're just apathetic. They're like, I haven't found a solution to my current problem, so maybe it'll just end.
And I think that's a good way to describe Zeal. Apathetic, that is. He seems to have resigned to his position, but not with any formal or complete acceptance of his position. There's a resignation, but it's a partial resignation. And he's like, yep, I'm here, and maybe I'll die doing this thing, because that would be sweet, sweet release.
Yeah, it's like this tension between resignation and acceptance, because he has all of these long gasps where he's like, and it describes like, it looked like it was really hard for him to make that breath, but you can tell he's more powerful than everyone else who's around right now.
Yeah.
Even when he sees Yaren and Mercy, and they're like, okay, let's get ready to fight. And he's like, I represent the Beast King, and I acknowledge that I've witnessed this thing. If you kill 2 golds, you are coming under judgment of the Beast King. And he like goes through this script, and he just goes, ugh. It's
like
just it's such a fun. Yeah, he's like, I don't know, I have to be doing this.
If hashtag FML was a character, it would be Z.
Oh, 100%. And he's a Pokemon trainer. I know you made the joke last episode where you played the Pokemon theme, but the Beast King path that he is in line of currently is like it's a Pokemon trainer class, right? Like,
yeah.
That's what it is. The animal came, the big woolly mammoth thing, and ran off the big scary bad guys. And it's just like, this is fun. Will's taking all of the fun things that he's loved growing up, and he's just like putting them in a book.
Yeah. And one thing I wanted to say earlier and forgot, but a perfect place to insert it is here. I like the bloopers in this book better than any of the bloopers in the previous books. That I will give. I was laughing. My wife listened to them, and she's like, what is going on? I'm like, it's a blooper book. She's like, why is there bloopers in books? I'm like, don't worry about it.
Because it's brilliant.
I was laughing.
Yeah.
And we were driving.
Over the river and through the woods?
Yeah. We were driving, and the bloopers came on, and I turned up the book, and then I listened to them, and I was chortling. I was laughing. I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. These made it worth it. The book was kind of lackluster to me for undetermined reasons still, but the bloopers were great. Anyway. Again, the bloopers are just a testament to Will's writing. Even the idea to put bloopers in the end of books.
I love it. But it wouldn't, here's the thing, that wouldn't work for every book, right?
No.
Like the end of it, and then, it, the mad being it is like, maybe I'll just eat you, and then eats them, but it's like the beginning of the book, and it's like quoting it wouldn't work in a book like that.
No. Or when Bill is taking Audra on the bike at the end of the book, and they fall over, and Audra breaks like her neck, and you're like,
Audra, get up!
Oh God!
Get up.
Oh, what have I done?
And Bill rides away.
Yeah, and Bill like leaves her corpse in the middle of Derry
and
just rides away.
Yeah, as adults. Yeah, it wouldn't work for every book, and
well, that's kind of funny though.
It wouldn't work, Slava. It wouldn't work for every book, but it does work here, which is great.
Yeah.
Anyway, we got away from my point about authentic characters, but I really love when an author can write an authentic character, and King does this too, because we're talking about it for a second, where you believe that these are real people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not in the sense of, I can look them up on Wikipedia, but they're real while I'm reading it, and that matters. And this is why, I love character development, because I haven't ever met a person who didn't have a story to tell. I've met people who didn't tell me their story, and they ended up being really boring. Usually those were dates, and I'm not apologetic about that.
No, hell no. You shouldn't be.
Because it's like you're coming together. Whenever 2 people are together, they're looking to connect. Even if it's like the point of connection is, hey, I'm trying to buy these pants from Target. 2 humans are interacting. Connection happens. Sorry if I'm an introvert and it doesn't matter. 2 humans are coming together. But I got really annoyed because it was dating stuff where it's like, we literally matched on one of these stupid apps. We're here. We both know why we're here, perceivably. And then they don't share. And you're like, okay, get lost. So I really appreciate authentic beings, characters, both real life ones and written ones.
Absolutely. And I think, to your point, and maybe this is a side quest within a side quest, a pocket side quest.
Oh.
I don't think people should be apologetic, whether it's the man or the woman speaking about their respective dates. You don't have to be apologetic if things didn't work out or if the person that's across the table from you or whatever the hell you're having your date is just boring. I'm sure I was boring to a few of the women that I went out with, and a few of them bored me to tears. And if you guys have been with us for a long time, you remember the episode way back in history of SideQuest where I explained that the way I dated and my exposure to quote unquote American dating was quite different from your average dating like you engaged in. But even
Yeah.
those people I hung out with, which perceivably could be called dates or that turned into a few dates where we hung out one on one, some of them we just didn't click. And some of them were objectively, I know how I sound when I say that, but were boring. And some of them were just probably boring to me because I didn't find what they had to say interesting. So it is what it
Right.
is. No
Right.
big deal.
And that's our little talk on authenticity. Thanks for coming.
Next time on SideQuest.
Vulnerability. I don't know. Pick a topic. I said this earlier, but I want to backtrack. When Lyndon comes in with his bright eyes and bushy tails, and he's like, "Well, why don't you just drink more of these?" And Zeal's like, "You think that'll fix my core?" And Lyndon looks at his core and he goes, "Ooh,
Oh.
and just like goes back to, "Oh, I'm sorry. You probably know more than me," and like goes back to drinking the really awesome water for
Yeah.
someone of a normal body type. Like, good work, Lyndon. Stick your foot in your mouth again.
I love it. And the fact that Lyndon is constantly Lyndon, even though
Oh,
he
yeah.
he grows up and matures, there's still Lyndon inside of him. He can't escape as
Yes.
fast.
Yes.
And you and me are the same way because I used to be a very bombastic person. I would say what I wanted when I wanted. And although I matured since then, and when I was a kid, I had an FU attitude all throughout my young life. I still have that attitude. That's still Slava. I still say bombastic things sometimes, but now I'm more tempered and I let that out appropriately, at least I think, or more appropriately than
Comparatively. Can vouch for that. Yeah.
10 years ago. So it's fun to watch Lyndon be Lyndon still.
Yeah, it's like watching your teenage younger brother grow up, and you're like, "Oh, that's cute. You're an idiot. Still love you, but you're an idiot." Oh man, good stuff. So, Ghostwater continues on. Zeal leaves, gets sent over, and I love that Will did this. Gets sent over to help 2 golds. Happens to be Yaren and Mercy. Great authorship. We as the audience know what's going on with them. Zeal is now required to help them for some reason. We'll probably find out in a different book. And then Lyndon is just walked past. Harmony just walks past him, ignoring him completely, steals Dross from him. Now, when you heard this, and I know you had a busy week, so maybe you didn't pay attention to it, but did you feel like Dross could be lost at this moment where he just like gets introduced for a book and then is gone?
No, I knew something was going to happen. I somehow knew that Dross was going to come back. And I say that because of the prologue. So despite it being jarring or unexpected or whatever, because Lyndon is already in a place where he's like kicking ass and taking names in the prologue, and he does what he does with a carry, I knew he was going to at least try. And I felt in my core, pun quasi intended, that he was going to save Dross.
Okay.
And I really was happy when he did. And his blooper, just one more quip about the blooper. His blooper was the one that made me laugh the second time throughout these bloopers because I really enjoyed it. Anyway, I knew that Dross was going to be saved, and I was happy, and good times were had by all.
Great. I think the first time that I read it, because this is like my 3rd or 4th go through, because I actually found Cradle when I think book 8 had just come out. So like I did catch up to a point and then had to start waiting for books. It wasn't most, it was like 30% of the whole series or less. Because I think it was, I want to say I found it at book 7 or 8 that had just come out. And he was talking about, well, I might go to 12 books, whatever. And I'm thinking, no, keep going. Like, this is a fun series. Like, don't stop. People want to read this, and they'll pay you money for it. But I also understand authors get burnt out. So,
and I think it's a good place to remind the audience what I said in response to that. Although I probably would like 2 or 3 more books, maybe 10 more books. I'm only in book 5. There's 12. I think at some point an author knows to end the story.
Like Seinfeld.
Yeah. Even though we might want more, and maybe I will get to book 12 and feel the same way or feel differently, feel just like you. But I think at some point, yeah, sure, burnout happens sometimes. But I really do believe authors come to a point in the story and say, you know what? This is where the story ends.
So business theory would disagree with you where you always want to have another piece of inventory on the shelf and measure the cost of selling the inventory, and measure the cost of not selling an inventory because it's out of inventory, like as if you're leaving money on the table, or having just a little bit left over in stock where you have to like eat the cost of 2 extra units, right? Even though authors get burnt out, I would say that business theory would say that they should. And I, as a business person, think that they should continue writing to both complete the story, but also add to their worlds. It doesn't have to be the same storyline, but like people want more, so give them more and they'll give you money for it.
I just wonder how much of that is applicable to literature writing. And I think you answer my question when you say just go with a different storyline. But my question is directly related to this series. How much of that is actually applicable to writing, that business theory to writing? Because let's say you create a product, you improve the product, and then there's a second variation. But let's say you create a product, business X creates this type of widget, and then after a while, the widget becomes obsolete, or it greatly is reduced in consumption, and you're like, all right, well, we're no longer going to sell this widget or produce this widget because we're going to go and make spidgets now. And I know I'm not doing the theory justice. I'm trying to play devil's advocate.
I don't agree. I think that even though an author might be burnt out, he can take a break from the series. Will took a break. He started another series called The Last Horizon, and it's a space opera type ordeal. It's set in the same universe. Cradle technically exists in this universe. We haven't been there because these people are flying around in space and they don't even know Cradle exists. So he's kind of doing this. But then he turned around and had a Kickstarter that made over $1 million for Cradle specifically. So it's like,
Yeah.
he's doing what I said because now he's trying to turn it into an anime, which is a very good like product development from like, hey, there's a series of books. People really love them. They keep buying them. They want more. Cool, you did a Kickstarter. He almost didn't finish the Kickstarter, but then he was like 200 grand away. And he said, hey, if we get this Kickstarter, I'll write another Cradle book. It just won't be at the end of the series. It'll be like side stories and other stuff that happens in the world pre end of book 12.
Okay.
And he got 200 grand in 4 hours. This is what I'm talking about, though, where people will pay him money for this thing. And he just got back from a sabbatical himself. He's not capitalizing on that in the way that I think that he could. And I'm not saying to do a Magic the Gathering where they just had a CEO over the last 4 years. She's gone now. That came in and made so many frickin' products that it saturated the market with Magic products and ruined the game pretty much, and the value structure of the secondary market. And a secondary market, for those who are not in the know, is when you have something and you resell it. So you open a pack of cards, you get a really great card, and then you sell it as a single on eBay or somewhere else, TCG Play or whatever. So she ruined the secondary market because she put out too many products too quickly. So you can overdo it, which I think you were kind of getting at, but we're talking about an author who was cutting it too short too early.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's a little bit of business and, authorship kickback as an additional side quest for all of our lovely listeners.
I'm not saying that Will would have oversaturated the market, so to speak, with writing, no matter what the amount is, more books in the Cradle series. And the fact that he started that Kickstarter and more people want it, I think your point is valid. That, and as a producer, somebody who cares about his readership, give the people what they want. So I concede.
I converted you on this too. I've converted you on world details and world building character development.
Well, yeah, as you were talking, I'm thinking, what are we doing? We're more than two guys in the internet, although we're definitely that. But we produce stuff, and the listeners that are with us, our fans, they like what we produce, and they listen to what we produce. The metrics prove it. I watch the back end of our hosting platform that gives me this data. To this day, we have people listening, whether they're new listeners or people revisiting some of our older stuff. We constantly have people listening to older episodes. And because of the new hosting platform, as I mentioned before the break and probably 30 episodes ago, people consume more of our new episodes quicker, if that makes sense. Because
Yeah.
the metrics showed that. Like when we had a few downloads the first day and then more trickled through the week, now we get a bunch of downloads and listens to the first day that it drops, and then a continuous trickle of listens later. So, as a producer of content, I do care about my audience.
Yeah.
I do care to give them more what they like, and that's why we took this break to improve our brand, to restructure the way we do things, to make sure our processes are set up in such a way that we give the best thing to our audience. And that as a principle also applies to giving them more, not just ending the podcast because 102 episodes is enough. No, they want more.
So you're talking yourself into my point of view.
I am. I really am. So, damn it to hell.
Yeah. Nice.
2 points? Is it 2 points or 1 point? That's 2
I don't know,
points.
audience. Drop it in the comments. How many points do I have? How many points does Slava have? Tell me that, actually. Forget about my points. How many points does Slava have? I know you're keeping score about the times that I lose, and I want you guys to just drop it in the comments. I'll take a little heat. I'm fine with that. Slava, tell me about your favorite quotes from the book.
I didn't write down or take notes on the quotes, but I will tell you a few favorite events in the book.
Go for it.
And one of them we already talked about. The other two is when Yaren hugs Lyndon so hard that she almost like breaks his bones.
Oh, yeah, she snaps him.
Yeah. And I love that because you see Yaren gonna shed some of her scales, right? She gets more vulnerable. She's beginning to trust Lyndon. She is authentic, to come back to that point. In this moment, Yaren truly feels for Lyndon, right? There's a love for Lyndon she has. And she shows it. She's not afraid to show it. She shows it unabashedly. She's authentic in the way she shows it. And Lyndon responds. And I think that was a great moment for her character arc, for her growth as a character. I think that was one of my favorite episodes. And the second one, right after it, is in the end of the book. And we can talk about each one respectively. But the second one is Ethan at the end of the book going, you know what, Emperor, I don't need to be in charge of anything. I got two people that I'm responsible for, and my primary responsibility as a leader, as an underlord, my responsibility is to them. I've started something. I'm going to finish it. I have to be with my people. I thought that was great because this whole thing with him losing his position, over the Aurelius family was primarily due to his shenanigans.
Right.
But now that his shenanigans have saved the Aurelius family, they're like, oh, yeah, okay, you can be in charge now. And I just find that so double-minded and just shitty.
100%.
Shenanigans are shenanigans, especially in an honor-shame culture. If shenanigans bring shame to your family, you don't want shenanigans. You can't have it both ways. You can't have your cake and eat it too. So the fact that he says, you know what, no, I'm good, I think is great. It also shows his love for Yaren and Lyndon, his commitment. So we get him showing that he really loves these two, that he cares for them, and he does want to continue with them, as he called it, the end of the sacred arts. He also has the wherewithal and enough pride, in the good sense. He has enough pride to say, I'm not playing these games again. These politics are not for me. I got better and bigger things to do, bigger fish to fry. I'm going to go with Lyndon and Yaren and do this. And hey, he obviously has to backpedal a little bit, or not backpedal, but he has to couch it in a way that the Emperor accepts it. And he says, Sky Sworn and my two disciples need me. And that's where my energy should go. The fact that we see him show commitment and love towards his disciples, and he shows us, the readers, that it's not about being in charge of anything for him, or at least maybe at this point he realizes, I don't get anything out of this. This is nonsense. Like, these people kicked me out because of what I did and how I did it. My methodology wasn't something they appreciated, irrespective of whether it was good or not.
Right.
For us as the readers. But him being who he was and using that methodology to save the family, all of a sudden it's okay.
Double-minded.
Double-minded. It should have been okay before. Now, because it was a little bit over the top, if they were wise and not double-minded, but mostly if they were wise, they could have kept him in check and used Ethan and his processes, his methodology, in a way that would help the family, or coached him in a way to tell him, we love what you're doing, take it down a notch, helped him grow as his leaders. So I love those 2 points in the book. Those 2 events really stood out to me as my favorite.
I want to throw you a bone real quick and get your predictions.
Do it.
So what do you think Yaren's going to do when Mercy and Lyndon become betrothed?
Ooh. I think, is that when Yaren leaves her a bit?
I'm just asking for your predictions on this one point, on what her as a character will do.
Well, my question will help me give you a fuller answer.
I'm not going to answer it.
Okay.
I'm throwing you a bone here. I'm not going to expand on it.
All right. Well, I want my bone, and I want to eat it too.
Yeah, that's right.
Anyway, phrasing, Slava.
Sounds better in Russian?
No. Does not at all. Does not at all. So, my prediction is twofold. If it's the place in the story where she leaves, that might be the impetus for her leaving. If she doesn't leave right away, I think Yaren is going to have a conflict of feelings. She's not going to understand what she's going through, because she might start realizing that her love for Lyndon goes beyond a sisterly love, or she might think that Mercy's stupid and not good enough for Lyndon and might take a sisterly role in the situation, might approach it like an older sister would, be like, hey, yeah, I know Mercy. She's, I don't know. I don't know about her. So I think one of 2 things will happen. She'll be conflicted because she'll realize she might have feelings for Lyndon beyond just a sister or a partner, or she might be like, really, Mercy? Mercy's who you're going with? Those are my predictions.
Fair enough.
What stood out to you? I've shared 2 things, and you said this is your favorite book, so I'm assuming there'll be a lot more that you can talk about than I did. What are 2 things? Let's do the same thing. So let's mirror my answer. What are 2 things that really stood out to you in this book?
So I love this quote where, and it's Orthos's coach, right? Like, Orthos is about to die. He's not doing well. His shell is cracked open. It's leaking energy. He's not doing well. It's not Deus Ex Machina, but like I could see someone accuse Will of that, where they find this well and, whatever. But once he's healed, he's like, your weakness is thinking that you are weaker than you are. I've said this before, and I'll say it again, and I'll say it 1,000 more times as we read Progression Fantasy. It's these moments where a guide character comes in and speaks to whoever we're following, and they go, hey, I realize you don't see what I see, but you're a lot more than you give yourself credit for, and you have a lot more going for you. And it's that lifting up, because we've all been there, and I'm getting on my life coach little box here, but like we've all been there where we don't feel like we're enough, we're not doing enough, et cetera, whatever. And we really are. And our friends need to come around us, or mentors or guides or whatever, and go, hey, and basically like slap us around a little bit and go, you've actually got a lot more going on right now. And you need to quit with this like, woe is me ordeal. And so really love Orthos for that, because he didn't get a lot of play in this book outside of like being injured, and then he's kind of powering up and he's clearing his Madra channels in a way that's sustainable. But then he confronts Lyndon where he goes, your weakness is thinking that you're weaker than you are. Of course, that then leads Lyndon to the last battle. It's a fun last battle. I kind of wish it was a little longer, and that the tension of the world cracking and imploding on itself would have been there a little bit more. It wasn't bad by any means, but I just think that the pressure could have like cooked up a little bit more. That's one of my second things, is this, there was almost a time limit in the book where the book had, like, they had to get out, right? Like, we kept seeing the thin webs of the world breaking in front of them. It's why Zeal left, and he's like, actually, you don't have 2 weeks anymore. You don't want to be here in 2 weeks. And Lyndon's like, okay, he gets Dross, to your point, he saves Dross and then leaves. It's those moments where there's pressure, there's the what if. And yeah, I know there's 7 more books. 7 more books after this one. So like, you know that some people are going to survive. You know that part of the journey is seeing these characters grow and Orthos walking us through. Anyway, those are the 2 things that I really liked, was this line from Orthos encouraging Lyndon, per usual, which is my love of progression fantasy, and this element, this story plot element where the world is about to implode on itself and Lyndon's got to get out.
That's a great answer. You said that these people will continue to grow, and there is, in life, this goes back to stuff you've said earlier and in previous episodes, there's always room for people to grow. And the way Will has set this up, and this touches upon what I said about Yaren just a couple of minutes ago, each book you see progression in the characters, and it's a natural progression. Now, forms aside towards the sacred art complaints, characters as people, there seems to be a very natural progression. Because if somebody progressed on the sacred arts of things like Lyndon has fast, you would imagine that that comes with also a maturity, a maturation of the other parts of Lyndon. And so much is thrown at Lyndon at once that unless he grows, he will collapse like that portal. That there's either him growing and making leaps and bounds or collapsing upon himself. So Will does that magnificently, I think. Given the genre, given the time limits, space limits of the books, another cookie for Mr. Wight.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's all the time we have for today. We will come back next time with a special guest episode that is bigger and better than before. So stay tuned for that. Also, next time, we'll be able to get into this comment that Slava made earlier, where Lyndon is more advanced than Book 4, and he is forced to strengthen his weak points, with the Void Dragon stance. And also, hopefully, we'll get to dive into honor culture and how we as Westerners view it, and whether or not shame is useful in life and in this book.
Love it. Can't wait. Because one of the guys that's going to be with us, and it's going to be more than Spencer. So it's going to be 2 more people joining us and a completely new person. But one of them is supposedly, based on our conversations with him, is a cradle scholar, at least in the...
That's a good way to put it.
Wuya and the Zenzia genres of Chinese stories, where Will pulls a lot of his stuff from. And we did a deep dive of sorts in one of the episodes where I did a bunch of research. But this guy went all out to do even a deeper dive than I did. So we'll be talking about that as well. I can't wait.
It'll be good. So thanks for tuning in to this episode of SideQuest. Make sure that you rate the show on your favorite podcast platform and share it with a book-loving friend so that we can get in front of more people.
And we'll see you next time on SideQuest.